An auteur director is one who is viewed as a major driving force in creative filmmaking, whose work is considered to have a particular style and is often seen as innovative. Therefore, Wes Anderson is often considered an auteur director due to his unusual filmmaking, instantly recognisable style of mise-en-scène and production techniques. In this video, I will analyse the following features of Anderson's work: symmetry, colour palette, and famous faces. In order to analyse these features, I have chosen 3 films from Anderson's filmography: The Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom, and The Royal Tenenbaums. These films span the length of Anderson's work, from some of his earliest to his most recent, allowing us to see how his style has both changed and remained constant over time. It is thought that humans naturally love symmetry, and Wes Anderson is no different. Symmetrical shots are seen throughout Anderson's films due to his well-known passion for perfection, and while it may go unnoticed by many members of the audience, once pointed out, it is impossible to ignore. As seen in these clips, Anderson's repeated use of symmetrical cinematography is not only aesthetically pleasing, but is also breaking all the rules taught in film schools, where asymmetric shots are preferred. However, this only strengthens Anderson's influence as an auteur director who is not afraid to break rules in his filmmaking. In this scene from the Grand Budapest Hotel, the will of Madame D is read before members of her extensive family, as well as M. Gustav and Zero. Although her son Dmitri is hoping for the majority of Madame D's property, it is revealed that in the final few hours of her life, she sent a letter entitling M. Gustav to a painting called Boy with Apple. This infuriates Dmitri, who attacks Gustav verbally and physically. Symmetry is used continuously in this scene from the first initial long shot of the room, with mirrored chairs and light fixtures, to the final confrontation between Gustav and Dmitri. In this scene, the audience can see and understand how perfectly centered Anderson likes his shots to be. From the perfectly aligned rows of ceiling lights and the centered bearskin rug with the identical wall lights, and even characters stood on both far sides of the screen. While it is not widely known why Anderson uses symmetry in such a way, it is thought that it could be for a number of reasons. This includes studies that have shown how humans naturally love symmetry, so Anderson's creations are often aesthetically pleasing to the human subconscious mind. This could encourage him to break the traditional rules of cinematography, where most shots are asymmetrically aligned to the left. However, Anderson's use of symmetrical and centered shots allows his audience to focus on the details he wants them to focus on more easily. Anderson's symmetrical style can also be seen throughout Moonrise Kingdom. For example, in Sam and Susie's wedding scene, centered shots are consistently used to give the scene a traditional Wes Anderson feel. In this scene, Sam and Susie visit Camp Lebanon in order to get married by Cousin Ben. The use of symmetrical and centered shots in the scene could contrast to the traditions associated with wedding ceremonies in churches. While churches are often presented in cinema as places of convention, Anderson ignores this in his cinematographic techniques, reflecting his position as an auteur director, as he is not afraid to break the rules or traditions of filmmaking, as mentioned previously. For example, when Jason Schwartzman is seen in the camp chapel, the composition of this shot reflects Anderson's style greatly, from the mirrored rows of candles above his head to the perfectly centered crucifix behind him. Anderson's symmetrical style can not only be seen in his later works, but also in some of his earliest, such as The Royal Tenenbaums from 2001. In the opening sequence of this film, Anderson can be seen to be establishing his cinematic style through his use of symmetrical and centered techniques in almost every shot in the sequence. In this sequence, the audience are introduced to the Tenenbaum family and are given a brief history of the family from when the 3 children were younger. Throughout this sequence, symmetrical and centered shots are used, which suggests that, as this is an example of Anderson's earlier work, he established his visual style and cinematic techniques early on in his directorial career and knew how he wanted his films to look. For example, most shots in the sequence feature some typical Wes Anderson cinematography. In film, colours are often used by directors as a way of making their creations more visually appealing to the audiences, but Wes Anderson seems to take this technique to another level, by creating recurring colour palettes within his films that tie each story to one another in each film. For example, in these clips from the Grand Budapest Hotel, a distinctly different group of colours is used in each time period, from the dull brown of 1985, the muted oranges and greens of 1968, and the powder, pink, purple and red of 1932, where the majority of the story takes place. This allows the audience to easily follow when the film jumps between time periods and what would be an otherwise confusing plot. This cinematic technique can also be seen throughout Moonrise Kingdom. For example, in the introduction to New Penzance, a strong theme of earthy toned colours is established, which could be linked to the outdoorsy nature of the film. In this short sequence from the start of the film, Anderson instantly gives the audience groups of colours such as yellows, greens and browns that they can associate with Moonrise Kingdom. Not only does this make the film more aesthetically pleasing to the audiences, but also makes the film more memorable when something as basic as colour may remind someone of Anderson's film, which in turn could encourage them to watch it again. While it is often considered that the cinematographic technique has developed through Wes Anderson's career, it can also also be seen in some of his earlier films, such as The Royal Tenenbaums. For example, in these clips from the opening sequence of The Royal Tenenbaums, rich traditional colours such as deep reds and blues are used in the film. The use of these colours, which are often associated with wealth and grandeur, could reflect the titular characters of the film. Royal Tenenbaums' name, as well as the family's apparent wealth, shown through their large house and minor frame mentioned in the film. Another of Wes Anderson's signature cinematic techniques is his use of repeated cast members across his films. This technique has developed through his directorial career, as his choice of actors has narrowed to reflect those who have previously appeared in his creations. When considering actors who have famously appeared in Wes Anderson films, the Wilson brothers often come to mind. Speaking to Matt Zoller Seitz for the Wes Anderson collection, Anderson mentions how he met Owen Wilson in a playwriting class at the University of Texas, where they both studied. He says how Wilson talked to him as if they had spoken before or knew each other's names, and that he was taking it for granted that if they didn't know each other yet, soon they would. After this initial meeting, Anderson was introduced to Wilson's brother Luke, and the trio have worked together on 7 out of 8 Anderson films to date, from the Wilson brothers' roles as Richie Tenenbaum and Eli Cash in The Royal Tenenbaums, to Owen's solo role as Monsieur Chuck in The Grand Budapest Hotel. Another famous face who also makes a regular appearance in Anderson films is Golden Globe winning actor Bill Murray, who has appeared in every Anderson film since Rushmore. It is not widely known how this regular partnership came to be, but Anderson has stated that he likes working with a recurring cast due to his unusual methods of filmmaking, so the familiar cast become in sync to his way of working.